Most people live their lives following maps drawn by others, seeing only what society allows them to see, believing truths are universal and obvious. But what if the most profound reality is invisible to everyone else? What if the understanding that could transform your life is yours alone, waiting quietly within, unnoticed, unshared, misunderstood? Few have the courage to embrace what others cannot comprehend, to walk paths of paradox, silence, and solitude. This is a call to awaken your inner awareness, to trust your unique perception, and to discover the mind-bending truths that are entirely your own, unseen, unexplainable, yet unmistakably real. The uniqueness of individual perception is one of the most profound and often overlooked aspects of human experience. Every person carries within them a lens shaped by countless factors: early childhood experiences, cultural influences, personal traumas, joys, education, and the subtle impressions left by every encounter with the world. This lens determines not only how they see the outer world, but also how they interpret internal thoughts and feelings. What appears obvious and self-evident to one person can seem utterly incomprehensible or even absurd to another. This is not merely a difference in opinion. It is a fundamental distinction in how reality is filtered and processed by the mind. Each individual interprets reality through a unique configuration of memory, emotion, and expectation, creating a deeply personal map of existence. When we speak of understanding, we often assume that our understanding is universal, forgetting that others may experience the same events or truths in entirely different ways. This creates a gap between inner clarity and outer communication, where the most profound insights can be dismissed or misunderstood simply because they do not fit someone else's framework. The recognition of this uniqueness is liberating, for it releases the pressure to conform one's perception to collective expectations and opens the door to authenticity. It also demands humility, as it becomes clear that no single mind can fully grasp the entirety of another's reality. By embracing the individuality of perception, one begins to see the beauty and diversity of thought and experience, and the seeming contradictions and conflicts between people are revealed as natural outcomes of differing internal landscapes rather than errors or failings. Understanding this allows one to navigate life with greater empathy and openness, acknowledging that truth is not a singular object to be discovered, but a living, evolving experience that exists differently in every consciousness. The inner realm of consciousness holds a depth that the outer world can never fully reveal, and true understanding arises not from accumulation of facts, but from intimate familiarity with one's own being. The mind is constantly engaged in interpreting the external environment, weighing information, judging situations, and comparing experiences. Yet all of this activity occurs on the surface of awareness. Beneath this layer lies a silent, observing presence that witnesses thoughts, emotions, and sensations without interference. When one turns attention inward, the patterns of the mind, the hidden motivations, and the subtle movements of energy begin to emerge. These insights often contradict conventional logic or social norms because they arise from direct experience rather than accepted rules. Many truths remain invisible to the crowd because they cannot be expressed in language or quantified. They are felt and understood only within the sanctuary of personal awareness. Society teaches us to rely on shared perception, to trust the consensus of others. Yet this consensus rarely touches the core of individual consciousness. True comprehension emerges when the observer within is allowed to perceive without judgment, when one can watch the mind in motion and see beyond its habitual reactions. This requires patience, courage, and a willingness to face discomfort, for the inner truths often challenge the comfortable illusions maintained by the ego. In turning inward, one discovers that the mind itself is not the master of reality but a tool, and the deeper reality is sensed in moments of stillness, silence, and presence. The outer world becomes secondary, merely a reflection of the internal landscape, and the revelations that arise cannot be taught or imposed. They are intimate, subtle, and profoundly personal, accessible only to those who cultivate them. Discipline to observe, feel, and awaken to the richness hidden beneath everyday perception. Life is woven with contradictions, opposites that seem to clash yet coexist, and only those who can embrace these paradoxes begin to perceive reality beyond superficial understanding. Every situation, every experience contains multiple layers of meaning, often conflicting, yet forming a coherent whole when seen from a wider perspective. The mind seeks simplicity and certainty, desiring clear answers and linear paths, but the deeper truths of existence resist such confinement. Joy cannot exist without sorrow. Light defines itself through darkness. Freedom is recognized only in the awareness of limitation. To deny one side of the paradox is to blind oneself to the richness of life, to experience only a fragment of what is present. Those who attempt to reduce reality to simple binaries miss the subtle interplay that gives existence its depth, failing to see that the opposites are complementary rather than contradictory. Embracing paradox requires courage, for it challenges habitual thinking and the comfort of predictable patterns. It invites one to hold tension without rushing to resolution, to observe without forcing understanding into preconceived molds. In doing so, a new dimension of perception emerges, one that allows contradiction to coexist and reveals a harmony invisible to the narrow mind. The paradoxes of life are not obstacles to comprehension, but gateways to awareness, showing that reality is fluid, dynamic, and beyond rigid categorization. This approach transforms confusion into insight, chaos into rhythm, and conflict into a dance of interrelated forces. By living in acceptance of duality and ambiguity, one cultivates flexibility of thought and depth of perception, understanding that the seeming contradictions of existence are essential to its beauty. The mind that learns to rest within paradox stops clinging to certainty and opens to a living truth that is always unfolding, revealing that what initially feels mind-bending or impossible to grasp can, in the quiet of awareness, become naturally clear and intimately understood. Words and concepts are only shadows of reality, mere attempts by the mind to capture what is essential, formless and infinite. And true understanding arises when one moves beyond these limitations into direct experience. Every thought we have is filtered through language, shaped by definitions, categories, and comparisons, creating a framework that can never fully contain the depth of what is. People rely on words to communicate and make sense of the world, yet words are inherently abstract and cannot convey the totality of lived experience. When the mind clings to labels, it confines perception, reducing a vast, dynamic reality into fixed notions and judgments. True comprehension is not intellectual but experiential, emerging when one observes without attaching names, when one witnesses without imposing meaning, and when awareness itself becomes the lens through which life is seen. Concepts can guide or inspire, but they can also mislead, trapping consciousness in ideas that feel real but are only representations of reality. To move beyond labels requires patience, courage, and a willingness to enter uncertainty, to feel life directly rather than categorize it for comfort. In this space, the richness of experience reveals itself, subtle, nuanced, and alive in ways that words cannot touch. One begins to notice the textures of emotion, the flow of energy, and the silent movement of the mind, all of which escape verbal description yet form the essence of knowing. When labels are released, the mind no longer insists on clarity or certainty imposed from the outside. It becomes receptive to the unfolding of existence as it is, allowing a deeper truth to emerge naturally. This truth is intimate, personal, and beyond the reach of teaching, found only through presence and attentiveness. By letting go of rigid frameworks and embracing the immediacy of experience, one discovers that understanding is not something to be explained, but something to be lived, sensed, and realized from within the courage. To be misunderstood is one of the most essential qualities for anyone seeking deeper understanding. For the path of insight often diverges sharply from the familiar and comfortable patterns of society. Most people fear rejection, judgment, or ridicule, and so they conform, silencing the subtle whispers of their own awareness in favor of acceptance by the many. Yet the mind that perceives truths beyond ordinary comprehension cannot remain entirely aligned with collective opinion. For deeper understanding often appears strange, paradoxical, or even irrational to those who have not walked the same inner path. To embrace this solitude requires bravery, the willingness to face skepticism and doubt without losing confidence in one's own insight. Misunderstanding is not a mark of failure, but a natural consequence of perceiving what others cannot, and it becomes a mirror showing the uniqueness of one's vision. Those who walk this path learn to value inner clarity over outer approval, to trust the subtle guidance of their own consciousness, even when it is invisible to others. This courage fosters freedom, freeing the mind from the compulsion to explain, justify, or defend what cannot be reduced to conventional terms. It allows one to remain authentic in thought, feeling, and action, maintaining integrity even amidst confusion or opposition. In this space, the individual learns patience, for understanding ripens slowly, and insight cannot be rushed or imposed upon others. The solitude that accompanies being misunderstood is not loneliness, but a fertile ground for self-realization, where mind can explore without distraction, where perception sharpens, and where subtle truths emerge in their full depth. Ultimately, the willingness to stand apart, to embrace the risk of being misread or dismissed, becomes a gateway to the freedom of thought, the depth of awareness, and the intimate experience of truths that are entirely one's own, uncolored by the expectations or limitations of others. The deepest truths of existence are not grasped through reasoning or analysis, but through direct experience, and they reveal themselves only when the mind is quiet and awareness is fully present. The intellect constantly seeks to explain, categorize, and predict. Yet the most profound realities elude all attempts at definition. They are subtle, fluid, and alive, existing beyond words and concepts, accessible only through sensing, feeling, and witnessing. When the mind stills and stops its endless chatter, a space opens where these truths can be known not as ideas but as living realities that resonate within the core of being. They are not learned or inherited. They are discovered in moments of deep attention, when one is fully receptive to the unfolding of life without interference. This knowing is intimate and personal, emerging differently for each individual because it arises from direct contact with one's own consciousness rather than from external authority or collective consensus. Many dismiss these truths as elusive or illogical because they cannot be explained or transmitted. Their essence is experiential, not communicable. To access them requires patience, openness, and the willingness to release real expectations, to let go of the need for certainty and control. In this surrender, the ordinary distinctions between self and world, cause and effect, right and wrong, begin to soften, revealing the interconnectedness of all phenomena. Reality is then perceived as a living flow, a dynamic interplay that can be felt and understood without mediation. The mind that seeks to capture it through thought alone remains blind, but the heart and awareness that simply observe, accept, and resonate with life encounter a truth that is profound, timeless, and unmistakably clear. It is a knowing that transcends logic, a comprehension that arises spontaneously when one moves beyond explanation and into the immediacy of presence, where understanding becomes inseparable from experience itself.